Let's go. Let's start here with Kleyton Martins, man. My brother, right? We've been together directly since December of last year. We started in what, November, more or less, right? Yeah,
November.
it was November, right?
Man, Australia also reminds me of the Australian Open, right? You were talking about,
Of
yeah, because I want to go there. I want to watch an Australian Open from the court. But let's go. Was it October or November that we started?
yeah, I think it was. That right, man? So, guys, look, we're going to talk a lot here with Kleyton. I want to start by talking about what's current, okay? Which is the Mateus Starling Quartet. We're launching the project here. The first single will be released on Tuesday the 15th at 7 p.m. here on YouTube. We'll be watching this premiere together. The first song, just to give you an idea, is a fusion a baião. So we're mixing elements of Brazilian music with fusion. It's really cool. Yeah. I wanted to start talking about this production, the arrangements that right? We divided it up there. It was a very enjoyable process. Just to explain a little how it went. Yeah, I would compose the songs, and every week or every 2 weeks I would go to Kleyton's house with the song, and we would work on it there, putting it on the computer, thinking about textures, arrangements, some things, debating, changing the tempo a bit, right? Yeah. So I wanted to talk a bit about this process from the sketch, right, of the composition to the recording. We got there. I think there are several stages we went through. How does your mind work as a musician and producer when you hear a repertoire for a project like this? What does your ear, what are you paying attention to?
First, I need to know from the artist, right? In this case, your project. What do you think about it, right? Where are you trying to go, right? I need to know this from the artist, where they are trying to go, so we can move in the same direction.
I want to get to where, like, you deduced where the destination is. Let's talk.
Yeah, what kind of sound did you want to make? You said, I want fusion with a Brazilian vibe. Too Brazilian. You said that right away. I want something sounding Brazilian, but I want fusion. I want, the electronic thing sounding. You said, I don't want acoustic piano. It's electric piano and such. And then we started to move the arrangements in that direction because it's no use for the producer to take your music and not know what your intention with the music is and take it in my direction that the producer listens, I don't know, I listen to about 20 to 30 songs a day.
When you have a very large repertoire, right?
Uh-huh.
Which wasn't the case here, right?
No. Yeah, but like for example, Kleyton, let's do a project together. Let's produce. Let's. Then I started listening to things. I started listening to instrumental albums from guitarists, from drummers, from bassists. I started listening, but I knew that the turning point would be your reference, right? Your purpose, right? For the album. I want fusion with a Brazilian sound. Brazilian with some Brazilian elements. From there, yeah. I started directing because, as I was saying, we listen to a lot of music, man. Every day I have to listen to a lot of music because then you keep renewing, right? You start broadening your horizons, and a producer without listening to music, it's not possible.
And it's also something that I think is interesting, right, man? That you have to switch some gears in your head because we're in a project like this, where we're making instrumental music, which is something we love a lot, right? Which is something that's in our musical essence. And I also believe that you handle a project like this with care, differently, and with a different expectation of return as well, right? Unlike a musician from the gospel market who comes to do a production with you, who has a completely different expectation, right? How do you think about that as well, then?
Man, with instrumental music, we even joke, right, that we don't even talk about money. Dude, I've played instrumental music. For a pizza at the end, the guy knows. Yeah. Now? No, we are instrumentalists, have this affection for instrumental music because it's not, it's not about It's about your project. When it's instrumental music, you become the artist, right? The musician only becomes the artist when they play instrumental music. If someone starts singing, the artist changes, the switch flips, right? So with instrumental music, we usually suffer more, right? We suffer, yeah, run more. We do what needs to be done in the most challenging way, right, man? Because I think today it's already better for instrumental music. There are already sponsors. The government is sponsoring some projects, but the budget is very different, man, for instrumental music compared to music with a singer, especially because the audience ratings are different, right? The audience is different, right, man? What should we put there? Audience for music with vocals, gospel music, secular, compared to instrumental, 10% at most.
I think it's less, man. Let's suppose that gospel music has an audience of 80 million people in Brazil, 100 million people.
Gospel music?
Yeah, 100 million. If instrumental music reaches 2 million, I think that's a lot, man. 2, 3 million.
Yeah, very difficult.
I think it's difficult, right? I think the crowd that really follows instrumental music in Brazil is smaller than that, right? It might be that it manages to penetrate a bit more, but it's difficult. So this is a point that I also think every musician, should at some point dedicate a bit to instrumental music, right, man?
For sure.
Because it demands a lot from the person, many things, right?
Uh-huh.
From the accompaniment part to the solo. And there are other things I want to touch on, like playing together in the studio, which is a different challenge. But here's the thing. Let's talk about this process, right, man? I would arrive there with the compositions, and we would put them on the computer. I would even arrive with the theme of the song recorded, and we would start the process. Let's explain to the folks how this arrangement development process works. Go ahead.
So first, we need the melody. You came with the melody and also with the harmony. It was already more advanced because you are a musician, an instrumentalist, so you had melody and harmony. But there, during the melody, what I really like to observe, I solo just the melody, even though I already have the chords, because I have the possibility to broaden the scope, to reharmonize. That's what we were doing, right? Your harmony was this and that. And now, could we modify this here within your... I can't change the characteristic of the singer, the artist, the instrumentalist, but you focus on the melody and without breaking any note of the melody, you keep changing there. That's the first step. For me, that's the first level. You start to reharmonize, try to find the best chords within the melody. I think that's the first step, when you arrange harmony and melody there. As yours was already well arranged, we were just adding or removing things. That's it for me, done. If I have the harmony and melody arranged, done. Now we move on to the rhythmic cells and try to test rhythms, drums, groove, patterns.
I think, in fact, that was a very strong contribution from you, because the keyboard is important in this project of mine, right? So it's about having a very distinct experience with sound textures, right? Because I think you didn't use pure piano even once, right? Clean?
No, only Rhodes.
Synthesizer.
Synthesizers, Moogs.
So having an open mind for that, right, man? And there's also a cool thing that, Kleyton plays the drums like crazy on the keyboard, dude. Man, he plays some grooves there really skillfully on the keyboard. It comes out just right. Then you quantize it and it fits perfectly. You learn to work well with that, right, man?
It's because back in the day, man, I used to make patterns, right? The keyboards came with that sequence programming. You could make patterns, those loops, right?
Yes.
You would make a measure, quantize it, have it multiply, replicate that until. But I noticed it became very rigid, You'd show that to a drummer and the guy would say, wow, am I supposed to play like this? Sometimes it would get in the way.
I understand.
Because the guy would be thinking about that mechanical thing you know, saying, damn, I have to play like this. But then I said, man, what if I if I try to simulate a drummer playing here, you know? Then I started practicing that on, I confess I was really addicted to it, man. Back in the day, I used to play instrumental music with drums on the keyboard.
And it sounded good.
And it sounded good. Then later, I only did it for pre-production, right? But I studied it, man. And it seems like it. I think there are people today who play drums very well on the keyboard. And I've also been caught a few times, like doing pre-production, adding a really intense drum fill, you know, anyway. And at the moment, the drummer gives a... Actually, it wasn't the professional drummer. It was an intermediate drummer. And the guy said, it's impossible to do this.
It's really the drums.
Then the guy said, man, just leave the drums as they are. But if it were a guy, if he hired a professional musician, the guy would do it, like a Valmir Bessa type.
Yes.
Then he would be able to do it, you know? But really, if the guy studies there, my brother, there are some drum parts that become complicated to execute.
By the way, you know, man, speaking of the band, we ended up not talking about it here. The guys couldn't make it here today to be with us, which includes Valmir Bessa on drums and Marcos Nato on bass. I also wanted to talk a little about how we got these guys, because initially I was set with Kleyton and I was still open to building the band. We talked quite a bit about this. And it's cool about the drum lines that Kleyton creates on the keyboard, because in a way, Valmir, man, he used what was there, about 80% of the time, right? He ended up creating little on top of it.
He improved what was already there?
Yeah, he improved what was already there. But there wasn't a drastic change. I think it's cool to talk about this, because it also shows that we were already quite sure about what we wanted in terms of sound. And there's another point, man, we only had 2 rehearsals, right?
2 rehearsals?
Yeah, 2 rehearsals.
That surprised me now.
We rehearsed once at the school, and we rehearsed another time at the studio, man. And then on the day of the setup, but that was it. So we had little rehearsals. So we also had to arrive. They're very defined, very well organized.
Yes.
I think we can talk about that too, this homework, right, man? Because if you show up there to record an album like this live, man, with 5 more people in the studio with a camera in your face, you have to be very at peace, right?
Yeah, I remember Nato, I said, because there's a lot of responsibility on the bass there. You who compose thinking about the lower part of the guitar, some harmonies. And I said, man, there's a lot of responsibility. It has to be someone who can handle it. We have several here in Rio, right?
Yes.
But like, the guys close to me that I've recorded with a lot are Nato and Valmir. And I thought of Nato. We called Nato, and Nato came to the first rehearsal. I was like, woo, damn, there's a lot of responsibility on the bass. And he came in with everything on.
Blew everyone away.
Everything in hand, man.
Both Valmir and Nato, right, man, are very competent and dedicated guys. Because sometimes the guy is really good, but doesn't take the project that seriously.
Yeah, sometimes the guy's schedule doesn't allow it, right? The guy is too overwhelmed. Can't listen, right? Then it doesn't matter if the guy is really good. If he can't listen, right? Because it's a fact. Playing instrumental music, folks, is a challenge for those who are musicians, who want to pursue this career. Playing with an artist is one thing. Okay, fine, you can make money. But to level up, to face new challenges, as a musician, you will have to get into instrumental music. I've never seen a top-notch guy in music without playing on instrumental music. I don't remember that. If there is, I forgot. So, we knew we needed seasoned guys to play, but also ones who listen to the music. If the guy hasn't listened to the repertoire, it's useless.